All right, everybody, I think we'll get started tonight. Thank you very much for coming. My name is John Jarosh. I'm the Assistant City Engineer here at the City of Maplewood. With me here tonight is Tyler Strong, one of our staff engineers, as well as a couple members of our IT staff and communications team. So thank you very much. Welcome. We're here tonight to talk about the Montana-Nebraska Area Street Improvement Project, City Project 20-08. So we're here tonight to, one, provide property owners in the project area with information on the proposed improvements, but more importantly, to obtain input from residents within the project area. And just a couple of quick notes before we get started. Tonight is strictly an informational meeting only. No decisions are being made here tonight. First, we'll just go through a few virtual meeting guidelines. It's kind of new to some people, so please be patient. Many of us are new to virtual meetings, so there's going to be a little bit of a learning curve for some people, so try to be patient throughout this. For those people attending the meeting via online, watching the video, there is a chat function that can be used. Please feel free to use that to type in any questions you may have. And we'll try to get to those as we go through the presentation. If not, we'll pick them up during the public comment portion at the end. We also have the raise your hand function. So if you have a question you'd like to answer during that public comment period at the end, please use the raise your hand function to notify us that you wish to speak. And then when we do that public comment period, we will call on individual people using that function. And for those of you, it looks like we have a few people that called into the meeting. For those people, we will go down the list of the phone numbers when we get to that public comment period, and we will call out each phone number. And if you have anything to say during that time, that'll be your chance to ask your questions. And if not, just a simple, I have no comments is fine as well. And when you go to speak during that comment period, you'll have to push *6 to unmute yourself. During the rest of the presentation, all the attendees are going to be muted until that public comment period at the end. So I'm going to get started. I'm going to be looking up to my left if you're seeing my face on here, just the way my monitors are set up. So here we go. The streets included in this project area, for those of you that are on the online meeting, you can see the project area generally bounded by Larpenter Avenue on the north, McKnight Road on the west, the railway to the south, and then Century Avenue to the east. The streets included in the project include Curry Street, Hoyt Avenue, Montana Avenue, Lakewood Drive, Nebraska Avenue, Myrtle Court, Myrtle Street, Arlington Avenue, Tevlin Court, Oaks Circle, and Mary Street. I think I got them all there. But those are the streets included that we're looking at improving as part of this improvement project. So why did we choose these streets? You guys are probably all well aware of the condition of the streets out there. We chose it because the pavement out there is failing. On a scale from 1 to 100, which is known as the pavement condition index, 0 being nothing left of a street, 100 being a brand new street, your streets averaged a 37 out of 100. So in pretty poor condition. The pavement has deteriorated to the point where patching it is no longer cost effective. In a lot of cases, it's no longer possible. Those patches just don't hold anymore. So we're looking at improving the street there. The majority of the concrete curb and gutter in your neighborhood is in good shape. There are some cracked pieces, some settled pieces, some pieces that have been damaged by the snow plows and other equipment. But the majority of the concrete curb and gutter in your neighborhood is in pretty good shape. And in general, the utilities, the storm sewer, the water main, the sanitary sewer system, those are all in decent shape as well. So the focus of this project is really on the pavement. So we're looking at doing what's called a pavement rehabilitation in your neighborhood. And the way we're looking at doing that is through what's called pavement reclamation. So reclamation is a process in which the existing street pavement is ground up, pulverized and mixed in with the aggregate base material below to create a new road base. So that material is regraded and compacted after the reclamation process. Any structurally damaged concrete curb and gutter. So if the concrete just has a hairline crack in it, a curb, we're not looking at replacing that. But if it's something that's not going to properly support the pavement section, we're going to look at replacing that as part of the project. We'd also look at making minor repairs to the sanitary sewer and storm sewer system as needed. There's not a lot that has to happen to those systems. They're in pretty good shape. We're mainly looking at upgrading the manhole covers out there to the current standard, as well as there's a few storm sewer catch basins that need some work, do need replacement or repair. We're also looking at then, after those utility repairs are done, installing 2 new layers of asphalt pavement. So it is a full replacement of that pavement section out there. How we finance these public improvement projects is through a variety of sources, including the Environmental Utility Fund for drainage improvements, Sanitary Fund for the sanitary repairs, Water Utility Fund for those water system repairs and upgrades. The gas franchise fee finances a large portion of these pavement rehabilitation projects. And then special assessments to the benefiting properties in the project area. So like you saw on that previous slide, special assessments are just one of the funding sources the city utilizes to finance these public improvement projects. In each year, the city council sets the maximum rate that an assessment can be for each type of improvement project. So for a full reconstruction project, they set a maximum rate. For a pavement rehabilitation project like this, they set a maximum unit rate. And that assessment rate would not vary with the individual project costs. So if for some reason this project cost went up by $500,000, your individual assessment rate would not change. And during the project design phase, the city hires an independent appraisal firm, and they determine what the direct benefit your property would receive from these improvements would be. And then per Minnesota state statutes, the city cannot assess you for more than that, that benefit to your property. So for 2021, that residential pavement rehabilitation rate, which applies to most properties in this project area, that maximum unit rate that the city council set was $3,450. That's pretty much been the same rate for the last 5 years. That amount is subject, though, to that special benefits appraisal. And as soon as we have that information, we would let you guys know what that is. So your assessment amount will not go up based on that special benefits appraisal. It could only come down if the appraisal warranted. Commercial, multi-dwelling, and apartments. I don't believe we have any of those in this project, but if we did, those would strictly be subject to that special benefits appraisal. I don't have a maximum unit rate for those ones. So there's a number of ways special assessments can be paid. Assessments can be paid in full or partial payment to the city interest-free for a period of 30 days following the assessment hearing. And we'll talk about that schedule a little bit more towards the end here. Payments are still accepted by the city after that 30-day interest-free period, but they do include interest from the date of that assessment hearing. And payments, the city does accept payments up until the time that we certify assessment amounts to Ramsey County, which happens on November 15th of every year. There's also what's known, or we're calling here, the no upfront payment option. That's basically where you don't pay anything upfront and your entire assessment amount gets certified to Ramsey County to be paid with your property taxes over a 15-year period. In the past 4 or 5 years here, that interest rate on those assessments has been in that 4 to 5% range. And that assessment will be paid, like I said, over a 15-year period with your Ramsey County property taxes. There are also options for deferring assessments. And a deferral is available if your payment of assessment would create a financial hardship and one of these following things. If you're a person 65 years of age or older, if you're retired due to permanent or total disability, or if you're a member of the armed forces called into active duty, you can request a financial hardship deferral. And if you're granted one of those deferrals, your assessment is basically delayed for a 15-year period. It does not go away. It just gets delayed for that 15-year period. And the big thing to remember there is it does accumulate interest over that time frame. So deferrals are an option to help buy time until you hopefully get into a better financial situation, but they do not by any means make that assessment go away. Let's see here. The assessments, like I said on the previous slide, the assessments come due with interest at the end of that deferral period, or if you no longer qualify for the deferral. And some reasons that you might not qualify any longer would be death of the owner, the sale of the property, a transfer of the property, subdivision of the property, or if for some reason the property lost its homestead status. Any of those reasons happened, you may no longer qualify for that deferral. There's also an undeveloped property deferral. So if you have a vacant lot, you can request an undeveloped property deferral. And if the city grants you an undeveloped property deferral, it'd be for that same period, a 15-year period. However, with an undeveloped property deferral, if no improvements are made on that property within 15 years, that assessment would be terminated at the end of that. If, however, you do decide to develop that parcel, that assessment would come due with all the interest accumulated up to that point. And just to note that deferrals and objections have to be submitted prior to the close of the assessment hearing. So here's a quick look at the public improvement process. Right now we're in what's called the feasibility study stage. So we are looking at the project area, identifying what improvements need to be made out in that neighborhood, what the preliminary costs of those improvements are, how we're going to pay for those, and then putting together a basic project schedule. This does take into consideration property owner feedback. That's what we're here for tonight, to get that started. And this is, like I said, the current stage of the project. We also have, after that, the public hearing. And the public hearing is the meeting at which residents can directly address the city council and voice their opinion on the project. At the end of the public hearing, after the council receives all that feedback and takes it into consideration, the city council votes on the improvements and decides whether or not to put the project into a design phase. After that, if it was approved, the city staff would design the project and bring those plans to city council for acceptance. And after acceptance, we would send them out to bids from qualified contractors. We'd receive those bids, and then we bring those bids to the city council and make a recommendation on awarding a construction contract. So at the meeting at which we bring those bids to the council, they would vote at the end of that on whether or not to put the project into construction. And there's also what's known as the assessment hearing. We talked about it a little bit, but that is the meeting at which residents in the project area can voice their opinion on the proposed assessments. And that will be the meeting at which, if you wish to object to your assessment, or if you wish to apply for a deferral, you would need to have those applications in by the end of that assessment hearing. Here's a rough schedule of what we're thinking for this project. So we're looking to bring that feasibility study to the city council in January of 2021. And if the council accepts that feasibility study, we'd be looking at holding a public hearing in February of 2021. And at the end of that, if the council votes to move forward with it, we would prepare plans in that February to March timeframe and send them out to the bids sometime in March. And then we'd be looking at holding that bid opening and awarding of a construction contract in that April to May timeframe. The assessment hearing, it's to be determined when we're going to hold that right now. In years past, we've held that at the same meeting as that award of contract, but due to the COVID situation this year, we actually separated that assessment hearing from the award of contract meeting and delayed it until the fall time. We were hoping to push it until we got out of the COVID situation, but obviously that did not happen. So we're still determining what we're going to do with that assessment hearing date. And as soon as we get that figured out, we will let everybody know. If everything is approved by council, we would look at beginning construction on this project in June of next year. And a pavement rehabilitation project is a relatively painless project. It's a pretty quick process. So we'd be looking at having all those streets wrapped up sometime in September of next year. And that is the extent of the presentation portion of tonight's meeting. So if anybody has any questions that they would like answered, please go and use the raise your hand feature in the Zoom meeting panel, and I will look and I'll find you and I will allow you to speak. All right, we're going to start with Herbert. Herbert, I gave you the ability to speak, if you could unmute yourself and ask your question.
Okay, can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly, sir. Thank you.
Okay, as you said, my name is Herbert Engelmeyer. I live here on Nebraska Avenue, 2371,
Okay.
Nebraska Avenue East. And I wonder why that general rehabilitation is really necessary, considering, in my opinion, there seems to be a little bit of neglect those last years doing a proper maintenance of the roadway system here. There was really no those little things when you're filling cracks or something, and it just got them bigger and bigger. And now we are at the point where we have to renew the whole thing. Wouldn't have been the possibility that with continuous minor repairs that we would have avoided that?
Sure, great question, Herbert. So with the way that the pavement is failing out there, there is no effective way to patch it long term. The only real way to address this failure that we're seeing out there is to remove that pavement that is failing. So our staff has been out there. They do their best with pothole patching and patching those shallow potholes that we're seeing out there, the raveling of the pavement. But that material, there's just not enough there for that new pavement to stick to. So it does not last very long. The city has a lot of streets in rough shape, and we're playing catch up quite a bit. So we're doing our best to keep up with all these streets that are failing, but yeah, you're right. I mean, we would have loved to have been able to come in there sooner and address this, but it just wasn't financially possible. So we're here now, and we're looking to finally address this so that we get a good pavement section in there that's going to last, another 30 plus years before we have to come back in there.
Mm-hmm. The reason I ask is I moved in here in '89, and I think like 2 or 3 years later, there was kind of a gravel done, those blue little gravel things, a coating. And since that time, really nothing happened anymore. And I wonder if that would have been possible to do that a second time. I've seen that recently in St. Paul, they do that now there too.
Yeah, so Maplewood, along with quite a few other cities in the metro area, are actually moving away from doing the chip seal. So what you're speaking of is where they put a tack coat of asphalt basically on top of the pavement surface, and then they drop the rock chips on there, and then they roll them in there. The idea there was to, kind of seal in the pavement and kind of protect it from oxidation. The problem that there's been a lot of studies done on this by the U of M and other entities. And the theory is that those chip seals actually are sealing in moisture, which is causing those shallow pop outs. So when we get a freeze thaw in the spring, the water's getting under that chip seal and it pops out just a shallow 1/2 inch to maybe 1 inch deep portion of the pavement. And that's why a lot of cities in the metro area are having similar issues with pavements that were put in the 80s and 90s, because there's kind of common practice back then to put that chip seal on there. But what we're finding is it's causing premature failure. We would have liked to get a little bit longer life out of these pavements. So we no longer in Maplewood do that. We haven't done the chip seals for 10 to 15 years. We do what's called a fog seal, where we spray on a thin layer of asphalt material. It kind of rejuvenates that top layer. And reduces some of the micro cracking that happens due to the oxidation from the sun. But we do not do that chip seal any longer in Maplewood.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I get the point. I have one more question. I've seen on 36 and other roads too that they kind of, or at least, for instance, on McKnight, that they would, on top of the regular asphalt coating or asphalt thing, they would put an extra layer of kind of a rough mineral uh, filament on top of it. Would that be, I mean, that asphalt layer, that would be it for 30 years, right? We don't need any additional top coating there, right?
Correct. After this project, we would just be looking at filling in cracks that might show up over the years, as well as, like I said, that fog seal, which kind of rejuvenates that the top portion of the pavement. We would not be looking at any sort of chip seal like that.
Okay, okay. Thanks, very well done. Okay,
Yeah, thank you very much, Herbert.
you're welcome.
All right, let's see who's next. Susan Eck, I have allowed you to talk. If you could unmute yourself and be happy to answer your question.
Okay, so we don't know what it's going to cost because you don't have the bids yet, but is everyone paying the same amount, or are we going to be billed per footage of front footage?
Sure, great question, Susan. So like I said a little bit earlier on that one slide, Maplewood assesses by the unit. So if you have one residential property that is not large enough to be subdivided, we're going to assess you or propose to for one residential unit. So one unit in Maplewood for this type of project is $3,450. If for some reason you had a very large lot that could be subdivided, we'd look to assess you for the number of units that that property could support.
So if I have 80 feet of frontage and my neighbor has 120 feet, we're still paying the same?
Correct.
Doesn't seem fair.
Correct. So part of the theory there is that one residential property utilizes the utilities the same as another residential property until the point it can be subdivided. That is, one residential property typically, uses the street the same amount and the utilities the same amount. So that's where that unit rate comes in. Like I said, the width of the property or the frontage on the street only comes into play when that property is so large that it can be subdivided in more than one unit.
Okay, thanks.
Yep, no problem. Thank you. All right. Is there anybody else out there that has any questions? All right. Thank you, Michelle. I unmuted you, or I allowed you to talk. Could you please ask your question for us?
Hi. Yeah, I am just wondering, I've been in the neighborhood for 22 years since my home was built. And I feel like our property taxes are pretty high compared to other communities. And I'm just wondering why we have to have a special assessment when nothing's been done for the roads for that long. It seems a little bit unfair, I feel like, with the cost of our property taxes and what we already pay for roads.
Sure, good question. So back in 1999, the city of Maplewood put in place a special assessment policy. And that's when they decided that in order to finance their public improvement projects, they didn't want to raise the taxes across the board. They wanted to have properties that are directly benefiting from the project pay a portion of the cost of that improvement. Now, yes, you're paying into taxes, you're paying into all these utility funds as well that are helping finance this project, but you've been helping finance projects throughout the city as well. So this is, your neighborhood's chance to receive input from the city as a whole, financing from the city as a whole to help pay for improvements in your neighborhood. But yes, you are being asked to, directly pay for a portion of the improvement costs. On a project like this, it's typical that the assessments cover 20 to 30% of the total project cost, with the remainder of those project costs being picked up by the various utility funds, and on this project, the gas franchise fee. So the rest of the city is contributing into your neighborhood, but yes, at the same time, you are being asked to make an investment directly into your neighborhood. Do you have any other questions, Michelle?
No, thank you. it just seems like really bad timing when COVID has affected so many of our lives this year, and not the best timing to, you know, raise taxes again on top of what they already are. I just feel for a lot of neighbors that I know have been affected even more than me, and it will be difficult for me as well.
Yes, absolutely understandable. So those are definitely comments that the city council needs to hear. That's something you should definitely, when we have those public hearings and the assessment hearing, those are things that you definitely need to, show up and make sure your opinion is heard. So please do, when it comes to the assessment hearing, the public hearing, please do make sure your voice is being heard at those.
Thanks, John.
Yep, thank you. All right. Let's see. Michael Oseth, I've allowed you to speak. If you could please unmute yourself, and we're happy to answer your question.
Hey, John, thanks for being here. Thanks for sharing. I'm assuming you can hear me.
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Cool. Quick question. Just curious as to why Sterling between Larpenteur and Montana and/or Idaho are not part of the overall project.
Sure, that's a good question. It's kind of a complicated question too, but a portion or a large portion of Sterling Street there does not have concrete curb and gutter.
Yep.
And the utilities are in rough shape over there too. So there's some improvements that have to happen on a larger scale over there. That's more of a full reconstruction project that we'll be looking at in the future. We did try to improve those sections back in, 2008. Somewhere around that time, and the residents in the neighborhood told us they were not ready for improvements at that time. So we did try to improve that area once already, but it is more of a full reconstruction. So that's why it's being, skipped over right now.
Okay. So is there going to be any skim coating done on that part, especially Sterling? That two block area is pretty bad.
It is not. We have not looked at that yet, but it is definitely something. I'll bring that up to our street superintendent. I don't believe that section of Sterling's even on the 5-year improvement plan right now. So that's something I'll talk to him about, and we'll look at see what has to be done there to make sure we, it's a reasonable surface to drive on until we can get there and fully reconstruct it.
Perfect. Thank you, John. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
You bet.
All right. Kathy, if you could unmute yourself, and we'd be happy to answer your question.
Hi, this is actually Bruce. I'm using my wife's email. My name's Bruce Eastrom. I'm on Lakewood Drive. I really appreciate the information you're presenting, and I really respect a lot of what people are saying. But the streets are so bad that my wife sprained her ankle really, really bad falling in one of the potholes earlier in the summer. So we're really happy that this is happening. My question is, there's a lot of group homes and a lot of rental homes in this area. How are they assessed? Are they assessed any differently than the private residential homes, especially the rental units?
Sure, I will have to look into that and see how they're laid out. If it's just a twin home type situation.
No, these are individual. On my street, we have at least 3 individual residential houses that are rental homes. And then we have one group home on our street. And I know there's over on Curry, there's a group home on Curry. And I know there's some other group homes in this area. So I'm just kind of curious as to how those are being assessed as well, but primarily the residential units, the residential rental units. There's also a group of townhomes on Montana. Are they assessed for each individual unit, or are they assessed for each individual building?
Yeah, it's a good question. And it kind of depends on how those units are laid out, if they actually own a portion of the property or not. But for all of those situations, those group homes, townhomes, side-by-side duplex type things, we're going to look directly to the independent appraiser and rely on their expertise on what those properties should be assessed for. In the past, it's usually fallen for a townhome. It's usually fallen somewhere slightly less than a residential property would. but we'll see. We're going to rely on what the independent appraiser tells us for that. And for the purposes of feasibility report, we'll just make a guesstimate on what that assessment amount will be, just to get the financing roughed in.
Very good. I appreciate your information. This has been very, very helpful meeting. I look forward to more input as we go along.
Good. And that is a good point for everybody. This is the first neighborhood meeting we're going to hold here. As we get closer to the public hearing time frame, we will be looking at holding an additional neighborhood meeting before that as well. So thank you. I don't see any more hands raised. I'm going to check in with our phone callers here to see if they have any questions. Phone number ending in 3346. If you could press *6 and unmute yourself and just let me know if you have any questions or not. Hello, I can hear you.
Hi. Oh, hello.
Hello.
That's my number. I have a question. I don't know if you're able to answer it at this point. Oh, my name is Mary Newcomb. I live on Montana.
Okay.
When you mentioned that, well, two things actually. You said that in the past that townhomes were assessed less than regular residential. Did I hear that correctly?
That's been my experience in the past. Yeah, that one residential unit is typically assessed less than a residential property. It's because there's so many, there's usually less property frontage per unit than a residential family home. So it usually falls somewhere less than a residential property unit.
Okay, if that's, but I thought the criteria you were using was by unit, not by curb space or whatever.
That is correct.
And if there's, a family of 4 with 3 vehicles is going to probably use the streets more than a residential person with 1. And I guess that's something to be addressed with the city council, but that doesn't seem as equitable if the rationale is each unit gets the benefit.
Yeah, maybe I didn't phrase that quite very well. So like I showed on, well, you couldn't see that, but on the slide I showed for any multifamily type property, townhomes, apartments, anything like that, it is strictly that unit rate is dependent on the special benefits appraisal. But it has been my past experience that a townhome unit comes in slightly less than a residential property unit would.
Okay, well, still, it's, yeah, okay. Well, my other question was, you said that the average interest rate in the past has been 4 to 5%.
Yes.
Is there any indication that that will be less for this project since they're practically giving money away?
Yeah, I didn't want to, So this year in 2020, that interest rate was quite less than that, quite a bit less than that. I want to say it was closer to 3%.
It was like 3.5%.
3.5%. Thanks,
Yeah.
Tyler. So that's a good topic. The interest rate is based upon the interest rate that the city gets on the bond sale. So whatever we sell those bonds for, that is the interest rate that gets passed along to the resident, plus an administrative interest rate for administering the assessment over a 15-year period. So it is reflective of the interest rate the city pays for the bond.
So is the administrative rate paid to the county? Because aren't they the ones that actually administer the taxes?
Correct. So anything that, any unpaid balances on the assessments after November 15th of the year get certified to Ramsey County to be paid with your taxes. So yes, they are the ones
Okay.
administering that interest rate over the life of that 15-year assessment.
Okay, and I'm sorry, one last question.
No problem.
The the time, the 30 days that starts running, that is after the assessment meeting?
Correct. So as soon as the
so-
assessments are approved by council, there's a 30-day interest-free window that starts.
And did you say that that might be not until this fall?
Yeah, it might be. Yeah, so in the past, it's typically been held at the same meeting as the award of contract, and that usually happens in that April to May timeframe. But this past year, due to COVID, we delayed that. And the idea there was to buy more time for residents, hopefully push ourselves out of the pandemic. Obviously, that didn't happen. And that also lessens the amount of interest that residents have to pay because you're pushing the assessment hearing date back. So we're probably going to look at doing that again. I just didn't want to set it in stone and put it on that slide for you, but we're going to likely look at doing that again because it did work out well for the residents, as well as it was easier for the city to administer that way. So we're likely looking at doing that again.
Great. Okay, thank you. You can, or do I have to mute myself or do you do it?
I can do it.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, I got a couple more people that raised their hands here. Laura, if you could unmute yourself.
Hi. In regards to the assessment time, when would we be notified of the amount that we're owed, and how are we going to be notified?
So we will be notifying you by mail. There are certain state statutes that have to be followed. I think it's 21 days in advance. We have to send that out to you. So we'll get you an official statement of assessment prior to that assessment hearing. But as soon as we get the appraisal information and determine what that rate is going to be, we're going to send that information out to everybody. So you'll have that likely here sometime early spring in that April to May timeframe. Yeah, and we're going to, like I said, we'll send that out as soon as we have it.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, thanks, Laura. All right. Cindy, if you could unmute yourself.
Yeah, I had a question about how the streets would be timed out. I live on Montana, and I know last summer it was quite hard to get out of our area because Century was being worked on, Larpenteur was being worked on. The only way out was one way, and that was onto McKnight. So what would be the timing of the streets?
So we're not going to have that information until we have a contractor on board in the spring. But in general, they would take a project like this. We have 2.75 miles of streets that we're looking at fixing as part of this project. So a fairly big project. So they're not going to come in. We're not going to allow them to come in and tear everything up at once. They're likely going to break this into 2 or 3 phases. And they typically, what they do on something like this is they work on the outer streets, the outer portions of the project first, and then work towards that central type street like Montana, and then finish on that to come out of the project area and not drive over the streets that they've already fixed with all their equipment. That being said, this project is going to be done under through traffic conditions. So you're going to be able to drive on the streets 99% of the time. As soon as that pavement reclamation machine grinds up the pavement and rolls it smooth, you're going to be able to drive on it. You're going to be driving on basically a gravel road, for a 2 to 3 week period while they replace concrete and fix the storm sewer system as needed. And then after that, they'll put the first layer of pavement on, and you'll be able to drive on that right away after they roll it. So it's a pretty pain-free process, these pavement rehabilitation projects. But as soon as we have the information from that contractor and we get them on board in the spring, we're going to send out, we're going to send out that information. We'll send out maps that kind of show the phasing of the project and what to expect as construction goes on. So as soon as we have that info, we'll send it out.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, thank you. All right, looking in the chat, I do see one question here. How long will new pavement be expected to last? So we're hoping to get a good 30 plus years out of this pavement. During that 30-year time frame, we're going to be in there. We're going to do a fog seal or two. We're going to look at sealing any cracks that have showed up. So we're not going to just put this down and abandon you guys for 30 years. But in general, we're looking at 30 years before we are looking to get back in there and do any major type of work, like a mill and overlay, or hopefully we don't have to go as extensive as a reclamation again. But in general, 30 years. Just looking to see if there's any other questions. All right, I don't see any other hands, so I'm going to go. There's 2 more phone callers I'm going to check in with. The phone number that ends in 0535. If you could push *6 and unmute yourself and just let me know whether or not you have any questions.
Hi, this is Margaret on Arlington. Hi. So I guess my question is, in terms of how you anticipate the new pavement going in, the pavement that's there isn't more than 21 years old because we're one of the original houses. Mm-hmm. And we were there when it all went in. Not like Herbert mentioned earlier, not a lot of maintenance happened over these years, hardly any actually, until the potholes got so very bad. So what is the strategy with this phase of project where we're talking about 30 years now when, it's at this stage of the game after, 21 years?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I talked about it a little bit before with Herbert's question, but the chip seals that we used to do back in the 90s, we no longer do those. Like I said, we're finding those are causing premature failure of that top layer of pavement. And that thin pop out that happens with that is pretty much impossible to patch effectively. The materials have also improved dramatically since the 90s. So the pavement itself, the mixture has a lot more design and thought that's gone into it. So we use the latest mixes that MnDOT engineers, there's people in labs that study this stuff for a living. So we've worked with them to determine what the best pavement type is to use on our residential streets, and we're going to use that. So, the combination of the new materials that are much better performing, along with, we're not going to do those chip seals anymore. And then we're going to do regular crack sealing as well as the fog sealing. That's going to push us to that 30 plus year mark on this new pavement. Did you have any follow-up questions for me?
No, thank you.
Yep, thank you. All right. I don't see the 3rd phone caller. I must have scared him away. Is there anybody else that has any questions here? I don't see any more hands raised up.
Say, JJ, it looks like Susan Eck has a question about the section of Sterling Street between Larpenteur and Montana.
Was that in the chat?
Yeah, it's in the chat. Or the question and answer, actually.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see that.
Yep.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just reading it quick. Okay, so the first question was Sterling between Larpenteur and Montana, and whether or not that should be fixed. Like I said before, there's a lot more that has to happen there than just fixing that pavement. There's concrete curb and gutter that has to be installed. There's utilities beneath those streets that need improving as well. I'm pretty sure the water main, it needs to be replaced in that area. Yeah. So we're not looking at doing that as part of this project. The funding sources just aren't there to do a full reconstruction. So that Sterling Street, along with Idaho, that, that's looked at as a full reconstruction project. It's not in the current 5-year plan, but we'll be looking at that within the next 10 years, I would say. But I am going to be working with the street superintendent to take a look at that and see if there's a, instead of just the smaller pothole patches, do we need to do something like a skim coat over a larger section there? Has it gotten to that point? So we're going to look at that. And then she also had a question about, or comment that they have a flat driveway that they'd like to, or that they're replacing. And they want to get a more gradual slope on that by changing the curbing. That is definitely something we can work with you on during the project. So if we're looking at replacing some concrete curb and gutter there to change some slopes, we can look at that during the project. Just please reach out to us when you're getting closer to your driveway replacement, and we can work with you on what would have to happen there to change that curb type. We're not looking at, like I said, in general, replacing a lot of concrete curb and gutter on this project. But if your driveway is super steep, or it has a drainage problem because it said it's very flat. I see. So if you're having a drainage problem or something like that due to a flat driveway, and we can help that out somehow by changing that curb and gutter at the end, lowering it down, putting less of a lip on it or something. We could look at that. I can't make any promises right now, but we can look at that and see what could happen as part of the project. I'm not seeing any other questions. Are you okay? Okay, Bruce asked how many other projects like this will be happening next summer in Maplewood. So this is one of 2 projects that we're looking at performing next year. We also have one very similar. It's a pavement rehabilitation project, pavement reclamation project, and it is happening in, I think, about as far south of Maplewood as you can get. It's south of Highwood Avenue. It's a neighborhood down there. It's a little bit smaller than this one in length of street, but like I said, very similar. So 2 projects like this in total. In years past, we have done 1 pavement rehabilitation project and 1 full street reconstruction project every year. But this year we had to shift priorities and do, 2 of the pavement rehabilitation projects just for funding purposes. All right. I don't see any other questions here. I do still see that Cindy and Susan X hands are raised. I don't know if they actually have a question or if they just didn't put their hand down. If either of you have thank you, Cindy. Susan, if you have a question, feel free to unmute yourself and ask it. Otherwise, if you could lower the hand, it would be helpful.
Well, you did read our comment on the chat.
Oh, that's right.
my comment was, I really feel that the section between Larpenteur and Montana should be replaced. It's really bad. And I've had stress on my motorcycle replaced, and I've really hit some pretty good potholes. They don't seem to be able to hold asphalt like they should. The other question I think you answered, and that was about the curbing. We do have a driveway, which I don't believe when the house was built, it should have been that flat. The house should have been raised another course, but evidently the building inspectors didn't think so or did not do their job in that area. But we have standing water in the driveway. When it snows and it's real wet, I end up with slush. Can't move it with the snow thrower. So we need to get some more slope on that drive. And that was the reason for the curbing change.
Okay. And Tyler, did you mention your address, sir, when you?
2544 Montana.
Okay. All right. That's something we'll look into. Like I said, if there's a way that we can lower the back of the curb in front of your driveway so that you can gain a little bit of slope. I mean, we're not gonna be able to gain a lot there because we're not changing the grade of the street or anything like that, but there might be something we can do with the back of the curb and gain you a couple inches. That will gain you a little bit of slope on your driveway.
Right. That's a good 5 or 6 inches if you go out and measure it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll come out and take a look at it, see what we can do.
All right.
Is it the D style curb out there, Tyler?
On Montana Street, let's see here, are you west of Sterling?
We are
Excuse me,
east of Sterling.
on Montana? Yeah, I believe that's D style curb out there. Yeah.
Okay, so there might
It
be,
is.
yeah, there should be the ability to gain a couple inches there. So,
Thank you.
okay.
Yeah, I'll take a look at it.
All right, thank you, sir. All right. I don't see any other hands raised. If anybody else has any questions, please raise your hand up and I will call on you. Give it a few minutes here and then we can wrap things up otherwise. I should mention at this point that yeah, feel free at any time if you think of something after this meeting, feel free to reach out to Tyler or I. My phone number is shown on the screen, as well as my email address. We'd be happy to answer any questions you guys might have if you think of them after this meeting. We're also going to put this presentation up on our website. On our website, there's a business and development tab. And then underneath that, there's a tab for infrastructure projects, or you'll see the infrastructure projects listed there. So look for that Montana-Nebraska improvement project and click on that, and the presentation will be listed on there. And then throughout this process, we will update that website as well to keep you guys up to date. But we really want to make sure that everybody, you know, is comfortable moving forward, knows what's going on, and has the information they need. So when it comes time to the public hearing or assessment hearings, you know, you guys have the information you need to make your best decisions and address the council if you wish. I'm not seeing any questions that have come in or hands raised. I'll give it another minute here. All right. Well, if there's no other questions, then I think we will end it here. I thank you all for coming tonight. We appreciate the input. And like I said, if you think of anything else, please feel free to reach out to either Tyler or myself. And we look forward to making these improvements in your neighborhood. I know you guys have been dealing with this pavement for quite a while. It is bad. It's in rough shape. And we're looking forward to making these improvements and making the quality of life down there better for all of you. So thank you very much. And you all have a good night.
Thank you.